Right, it is 17 minutes past 2. Let's move swiftly on, shall we, and talk about ADHD. ADHD and work. That's today's focus. This week on BBC Radio Nottingham, we're looking at adults with ADHD. So, you know the figures now. You know it's around 3 to 4% of adults in the UK have ADHD, around 2 million or so, and the vast majority of those are undiagnosed. Now, among the conversations you've heard this week, work has formed a huge aspect. So here's Mansfield's Richard Bacon talking about his work, his jobs. He now creates TV programmes, but he said the busyness of radio and telly and presenting there really has played to his strengths.
Probably most of my career has been on the radio, for averaged out, or sort of a bit of hosting. And the sort of shows that I still host are like radio shows, the kind of magazine, and you go through lots of topics. And that, I think that has always suited me. One of the challenges for me in doing this newer job is having the idea is great because you can use a hyper focus, but the bit when you then have to kind of manage a production and people, not that is a challenge for me because it doesn't move at that pace that my brain really enjoys, and that's been a readjustment that I still wrestle with a little bit.
So that's Richard Bacon speaking earlier on this week. You also heard yesterday from Katie Roper. Now, Katie's a maths teacher at Bluecoat Woollerton. She was diagnosed 2 years ago and has learnt her ADHD means she struggles with prioritisation, and she learnt some workarounds.
In fact, I will go to people. I literally go to my colleagues sometimes and say, can you have a look at this? Which of these things do I need to do? Or can you help me get started? Because quite often it's trouble with getting started. Once I've started, I can keep running with it.
Now, Matt Boyd runs the neurodiverse recruitment agency Exceptional Individuals. Their aim is to help those with ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia and autism find work and stay in work, and they educate employers as well. I'm delighted that Matt is here this afternoon. Matt, a very good afternoon to you. Thank you for joining me. So tell me a little bit about Exceptional Individuals then. Tell me how you started the company. Tell me why it was so needed in your eyes.
Hi, Verity. Nice to be here today. Yes, absolutely. So, Exceptional Individuals, we started by myself because I'm dyslexic, and I found it really hard to get into work because I'd always make a spelling mistake or not quite understand the questions the application forms were saying. And as soon as I started the organisation, my first colleague, actually, who has ADHD, joined the team, and we realised it wasn't just a dyslexic problem, but a problem where employers weren't understanding neurodiversity as a whole, and individuals who had ADHD didn't understand their strengths. They've always been told what they're bad at, but not so much what they're good at. And we really wanted to change that, change employers' perceptions, but also work with the individuals to understand their strengths.
I love that, and I love the fact that it's twofold, that, you know, you're helping people to find work and stay in work and to write applications, but also there's the training side of it for workplaces and the education side of it for workplaces as well. It seems like the two have to go hand in hand.
Yeah, and we learnt that lesson 8 years ago. We were placing people in organisations, and the organisations weren't ready in their journey. So we realised quite quickly that we had to do some workshops, webinars, audits to make sure that they had procedures and processes in place. And it can just be very small changes that are going to have a huge impact on someone with ADHD.
And some of it just education, just clearly saying, look, this is what ADHD is. We know, we've heard so many times this week, Matt, about the image of ADHD being the kind of the 8-year-old in the classroom who's, you know, bouncing off the walls, who can't sit still, who can't concentrate. So as part of your role being about that, right, well, we just need to tell people, we just need to educate employers and bosses and managers about what ADHD is.
Absolutely. And we use my colleagues as examples of people with ADHD that are incredibly capable and successful and do so well in what they do. And that education piece is so hard. But we find every workshop we do, people disclose at the companies. And when people know their colleagues have ADHD, it really starts to change perceptions, which is fantastic for everyone.
We'll get on to a little bit more about what employers can do in a moment. But should we talk about those with ADHD trying to find work and operating in an office environment or in a workplace? What are the main challenges, do you think, as you see it, and from what you're hearing from some of the people you've been talking to?
I think one of the main challenges is disclosure. So actually telling colleagues, employers that you have ADHD. I think we're coming a long way. There's still a lot of work to do, and there's organisations and government organisations that can actually provide in-work support. It's funded by government. So that could be things like, how do I focus more on a particular subject? It can be organising time. You can actually get fully funded coaching there now. So that's always a good start, is if you're going to disclose, go with what things you can use to support you in the workplace, because some employers, it can be a bit shocking for them and they don't understand yet. So having some solutions in place when you go and tell colleagues, when you go and tell your manager, is really important. And you can find a lot of that information out on our website and online as well.
Do you think that people with ADHD, I don't even know if you're going to be able to answer this question, to be honest with you, Matt, because of course ADHD is a spectrum and it presents differently in different people. And, I don't want to kind of clump everybody with ADHD together, but I realise that potentially from asking this question, I am doing that. But is there a type of industry, do you think, or a type of field that people with ADHD are more drawn to?
So we thought this when we started as well, and we looked at the thousands of CVs we had, especially with ADHD, and we looked at what industries people were applying for. And I would love to give you a yes, it's the creative sector, or yes, it's a different sector, but there isn't a one industry that's perfect for someone with ADHD. It is really on the individual, and I think that message is so key. One person with ADHD is one person with ADHD. Depending on what they want to do and what career they have is so different according to the individual, but you can definitely use your strengths across different industries, be it hyperfocus or creativity or the innovation that they possess. It can be very transferable depending on what sector they're working in.
And that's another thing that I think we've all learned so much about this week is again that kind of the positives of ADHD, the fact that people with ADHD are solution focused and creative, and they see opportunity and they see a way of doing things different. And actually, maybe the negative image of ADHD is the one that rises to the top, and actually there's so much more to it. Do you think employers maybe are a bit fearful of employing people with ADHD?
I think so, yeah. I think a lot of the time employers have one way of working and they want everyone to fit in that way. With someone with ADHD, they can bring so much to a workforce and have incredible results, but it's up for the management and the employer themselves to actually change the ways that they operate so that individual fits into the workplace and can be incredibly effective, which is how it should be, really. So we're always pushing for those changes of processes and procedures to allow that individual to work to their best.
And we're continuing our special series this week, looking at ADHD in adults, hearing from adults who have ADHD, adults who were diagnosed with ADHD in adult life. At the moment, you're here with Matt Boyd, who's from Exceptional Individuals, which is a neurodiverse recruitment agency. And Matt, I'll kind of go back to the point that you made earlier on, which was your original aim was to help those who are neurodiverse, to find a job, but then you realised that workplaces just weren't set up for it. So when you go in and when you educate a workplace and when you train a workplace on how to make their environment work best for all, what are the things that you tend to say to them?
So we have quite a good process now in place where we will look at all the different parts of the organisation, from when ADHD individuals are initially applying for jobs on their website. So how are they asking people to disclose? Where is the disclosure statement? And what are the questions being asked? To interview. So someone with ADHD, and we see this quite a lot in an interview situation, it can be quite high stress. So they may speak a lot and not maybe answer the question that was originally put to them. And again, this is individually based. That's on some occasions. We just put reasonable adjustments in those interviews to give them the opportunity to ask the question again and take a break. And then actually in the workplace itself. So the really simple things employers can do are do a workshop, learn about ADHD, see what colleagues already in the company may have ADHD and listen to their stories. we find the stories are so powerful from colleagues and people that already work in organisations, and they can really input on building a cultural environment in a workforce that is accepting of anyone with ADHD at that company.
And led from the workforce as well, which is where its strengths are, aren't they? Rather than it coming from top down, which is so important, obviously, but bottom up, being led by the workforce itself.
Absolutely, and that lived experience is so key. There's nothing really comparable to that. An individual with ADHD knows their ADHD, and they have the opportunity to share some of the challenges, but also the strengths that they have, and we're always going to approach it from a strengths-based approach with awareness of the challenges at the same time.
You know, it's interesting. I'm thinking back to a chat that we had with Richard Bacon on Monday where he was talking about his ADHD and how it presents itself. And he used a term, and I know this is quite controversial in ADHD communities, but he used the term that his hyperfocus was a superpower. And I'm wondering from an employer's perspective whether actually having somebody with hyperfocus is beneficial in some ways, because, you know, they work really, really, really hard and won't stop until the job is done. But then there needs to be an awareness there, right? Doesn't there, from the employers to stop that person burning out?
Yeah, we see that so often. We have these incredible individuals who get into this hyper focus, be it on a project, be it on something that they're completing to a deadline. But because of that, they'll work all the hours, they won't sleep well, it'll be their absolute focus on their mind for days on end, and their work-life balance gets really impacted. So it's something that employers really need to watch out for. Is, fantastic, hyper-focused, the work and the results are incredible, but what is the impact on that individual's mental health? People-pleasing in the ADHD community is something we're talking about a lot at the moment, and it's very common with my colleagues with ADHD that they just want to do the best all the time and please whoever's asking for the task to be completed, but sometimes they forget about themselves and burn out, like you said.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It really is. I was thinking as well about LinkedIn, where you go on there, don't you, and you kind of write the jobs that you've got, and it's a place where employers can find other staff. And recently, they added a badge, didn't they, for dyslexia, because of the strengths that and the positive side of dyslexia. And I'm wondering if we'll get to the stage with ADHD where, they'll have the same thing for ADHD on LinkedIn, and people will be more aware of the strengths of ADHD.
Yeah, I'd hope so. Let's start that campaign today. Let's get that up. But we really hope so in the community itself. And I can speak from experience that my colleagues with ADHD, when given the space to work and their input and saying what they're doing, the results are just fantastic. We're so happy with everything that we get from the team. Yeah,
let's make that campaign, Matt. That's it, isn't it? That's how it should be.
Absolutely,
a badge to be proud of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's so right, and there are challenges. I think that's why many of the neurodivergent community do get upset, is that superpower badge, but also there are so many incredible strengths, and we really need to shout about them and make the rest of the population aware. Yeah.
Matt, fascinating to chat to you. Thank you so much. It's been interesting and incredibly informative, and it's great to have you on this afternoon. So I appreciate your time. Matt Boyd there, who runs the neurodiverse recruitment agency. It's Exceptional Individuals. Their aim is to help those with ADHD, dyslexia, dyspraxia and autism find work and stay in work, and they educate employers as well to make that workplace accessible and a place where people with neurodiversities can thrive.